We've got to understand that this is not a system that will make us clean and decent and upright and strong and self-determined people. We have to set up education for all those in the colonies. And after a while, you'll have a decent people coming up.
You've heard the slogans, you've seen the headlines. Black excellence and Black Lives Matter, representation. But if slogans were enough, we'd be free by now. We wouldn't be watching generation after generation face the same bullets, the same poverty, the same tired promises. So the question isn't why Black people are still oppressed. The question is who profits from keeping it that way. Minister Louis Farrakhan doesn't dance around that question. He cuts straight to the bone. In a world where activists are edited, speeches are sanitized, and solutions are buried beneath corporate campaigns, Farrakhan lays out a blueprint so raw and so precise that it demands attention. Not for controversy, not for clout, but because it threatens the very systems that have survived by keeping Black people divided, disarmed, and dependent. But what solution did he give that even the black puppet tried to hide? Let's find out.
Point.
Well, that's the thinking of the most enlightened. Because the most enlightened know that the system is rotten. It's been rotten for a long time. And so, can we get out of this system something good for us? We could, if we were united with an intelligent self-interest that we could push. We might be able to get something. But America is out to destroy the little man. I'm talking about those in the highest places. Flint, Michigan was not an accident. That's by design. I'm on my way to Newark, New Jersey, and I just heard that some lead was coming into Newark, into schools. And I asked the question, whose schools? They said the black and the brown. Is that an accident? I don't think so. We are being designed to be destroyed. And unless we see that and come together as a people under vicious attack, then we will suffer the consequences of the evil that's in high places. And to those of you in the listening audience who are spiritually inclined, listen to these words of Paul. We war not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and the rulers of the darkness of this world and spiritual wickedness that's in high places. It's in high places that the plot against black and brown and poor white is going on. It's spiritual wickedness that's way up in the ruling classes of religious people who don't want to see the little man rise.
Farrakhan doesn't start with hope. He starts with the obstacle, not poverty, not crime, not even racism in its surface form. He starts with intent. With the uncomfortable but undeniable truth, there are people, real, powerful, well-connected people, who are invested in black failure, not just indifferent to your suffering, invested, because your weakness is their stability. Your disunity is their insurance policy. Your distractions are their cover. In this segment, he names what most are too afraid to even whisper. The suppression of black progress is not a coincidence. It is not a byproduct. It is deliberate. And not just by individuals, but by an entire infrastructure of banks, governments, media, and education systems that rely on black people staying exactly where they are, at the bottom, angry, dependent, and fighting the wrong battles. What Farrakhan unpacks here is not abstract. He's talking about policy, media, surveillance, psychological warfare, even your paycheck, all orchestrated in a way that looks like normal life, but is a well-oiled mechanism of limitation. Every time a black community builds something real, economic power, political strength, cultural pride, it is systematically co-opted, infiltrated, or crushed. Not because it was flawed, but because it worked. That's what he means when he says it's the higher people. Not police officers on the street, not your racist co-worker. It's the boardrooms you never see, the meetings you're never invited to, the billion-dollar interests that see black empowerment as a threat to their dominance. Farrakhan is peeling back the curtain on a level of power most people are trained not to notice, because to name it is to challenge it, and to challenge it is to risk everything. But why is this threat so potent? Because, as Farrakhan suggests, when the black man rises, he does not rise alone. He lifts entire families, entire communities, and entire narratives. He redefines history. He restructures power. He exposes the lie that black people are inferior, incapable, or in need of management. And once that illusion collapses, so does the justification for nearly every system that exploits it. And here's the twist. They don't just fear the Malcolm X's or the revolutionary leaders. They fear the everyday black man waking up, the father who stops begging for justice and starts organizing for it, the young woman who builds her own business without asking for permission, the student who sees through the school-to-prison pipeline and decides to burn the whole system down, metaphorically, economically, and politically. These people, Farrakhan says, are the real revolutionaries, because they cannot be bought and they cannot be broken. But all of this raises a deeper question. If the system is built to keep you down, how can you possibly expect it to protect you? You can't. Because what Farrakhan is exposing isn't just opposition. It's a machine. A machine that doesn't need to overtly attack anymore. It just needs to keep feeding you illusions. That voting once every 4 years will save you. That getting a seat at someone else's table is the same as owning your own. That if you just work twice as hard, you'll finally be seen as equal. These are the lies that the powerful rely on to keep the oppressed chasing shadows instead of grabbing the wheel. This is why Farrakhan's message is more than just a critique. It's a diagnosis. You're not broken. You're being broken by a system that works exactly as designed. And once you see that, the next logical step becomes clear. You must stop asking your oppressor to protect you. You must stop assuming their systems will ever serve your liberation. Because once you understand that your existence is seen as a threat, not by accident, but by design, you realize that security must come from within. And that's where Farrakhan goes next.
Who could argue with us for trying to make our own community a decent place to live? You know, we really are being colonized. Harlem and Brooklyn, they used to be or are colonies. In a colony, the education is controlled from outside. The politics is controlled from outside. The economics is controlled from outside. The police in a colony are not there to serve and to protect, but there to keep the colonized ones from disturbing the status quo. The question is, do we want to continue to live as a colony, or do we want to be like the original 13 colonies and decide that we've had enough? Let's break from a colonial past and let's seek freedom. That means what? How do we do it? What do we do now? Where shall we go now? It's our responsibility to make where we live decent and clean. It's our responsibility to protect and police our own communities. We do not need racist police policing us, killing us as they please. Why not we police ourselves? Why couldn't those black officers who are trained soldiers who are trained, young people who are militant but without direction. Why can't we train our young people? And instead of the money going to a system that oppresses us, some of those tax dollars that we give to police, give them to us and let us police ourselves.
Once you realize you're not just neglected but actively suppressed, the next question hits even harder. Who's protecting you? Not rhetorically, literally. When danger shows up, when lives are on the line, when justice is denied and blood is spilled in the street, who stands between you and that danger? The honest answer, as Farrakhan makes painfully clear, is no one. Not the system, not its courts, and certainly not its police. Because here's the reality. You cannot be protected by a force that was built to control you. Farrakhan draws a clear line between colonial domination and modern policing, and it's not symbolic, it's structural. What were the colonial troops doing in African villages? Enforcing foreign rule, quelling resistance, guarding stolen property. Fast forward to today, and the police in black communities serve a disturbingly similar function. Not to serve and protect, but to monitor and suppress. He's not saying all officers are bad. That's not the point. The point is that the institution was never designed with black safety in mind. It was designed to protect property, not people, especially not people who challenge the status quo. And in a society where black lives are seen as disposable, the badge too often becomes a license, not a limit. This is why Farrakhan's solution isn't symbolic reform. It's structural independence. His message is radical in its simplicity. Black people need their systems of security, their policing, their justice infrastructure, rooted in accountability to the community, not a distant power structure. And this isn't wishful thinking. It's been done before. In the 1960s, the Black Panther Party implemented community patrols that followed police officers, documented misconduct, and intervened when violence seemed imminent. They trained volunteers to carry firearms legally and responsibly. They taught children how to respond when stopped. And just like that, the rules changed, because power speaks only to power. Farrakhan is not calling for chaos. He's calling for self-determination. Because when your protection depends on those who fear your very presence, you're not being protected, you're being policed. And there's a massive difference. You can't reform your way out of a system that sees you as the problem. You can't pray racism out of a badge. You can't diversity train someone into seeing you as human. What you can do is build your shield, a security apparatus that answers to your community, not a governor. A justice process that prioritizes restoration over incarceration. Emergency responders are trained in conflict de-escalation, not just punishment. But this shift requires something deeper than infrastructure. It requires a cultural change. For generations, black communities have been conditioned to rely on external authority, the city council, the mayor, the police chief, and taught that protection is something granted. Farrakhan flips that entirely. Protection, he insists, is something claimed. And this claim must start young. It must be taught in schools, practiced in neighborhoods, funded by the community, and modeled in leadership. Because when a child grows up knowing that their life will be defended with the same urgency as anyone else's, by their own, it changes how they see themselves. They no longer walk through the world bracing for violence. They walk through it with dignity. But this isn't just about defense, it's also about discipline. A self-policing community doesn't mean lawlessness. It means accountability without oppression. It means elders mediating disputes. It means neighborhood watch is not in fear, but in solidarity. It means systems built on repair, not revenge. Still, as Farrakhan warns, none of this can happen if black people remain fragmented, emotionally, politically, and economically. Because the kind of protection he envisions isn't possible without collective will. And that's where this truth leads. If safety can't be outsourced and power won't be given, then unity becomes the only way forward. And unity, real, strategic, uncompromising unity, isn't just the next step. It's the only step that makes everything else possible. Here's a quick reminder. Please like, share, and subscribe to Black Culture Unlocked for powerful Black news, real stories of our heroes and leaders, and the rich culture and history the world tried to forget.
It's the principalities and the powers. So unless we come together as a people and stop our foolish beefing among each other, sit down like intelligent men and women and settle the things that divide us from each other, then come together like a solid wall and we can make something happen. To answer you very specifically, the Bible says, talking about Babylon, God says, "Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins and her plagues, for her sins have reached unto heaven." We don't need the Democratic Party. We don't need the Republican Party. We can get a little from both of them. But Elijah Muhammad said we ought to form our own political machine. A machine that works for the oppressed. The oppressed, black, brown, red, yellow, white. Let's come together and form our own party and give the other parties hell, and then vet who we want and take down these crooked, rotten politicians that are in Congress, in the White House, and in the Supreme Court.
Once you accept that your safety cannot be entrusted to outside forces and that your survival depends on systems of your own making, there's only one path forward: collective power. And that's where Farrakhan takes us next, into the one word the system fears more than protest, more than revolution, more than any weapon: unity. But this isn't some sentimental call to love one another. Farrakhan isn't asking for group hugs or vague solidarity. He's talking about tactical, high-stakes, disciplined unity, the kind that terrifies governments, the kind that shifts economies, the kind that historically has toppled empires. And he doesn't just mean unity within a neighborhood, he means across borders, across ideologies, across class and color shades. Because here's the hard truth. Every single structure that has benefited from Black suffering has done so by dividing Black people first. Divide them by religion, divide them by tribe, divide them by skin tone, income, education, sexual orientation, political party. It doesn't matter how, as long as the illusion of difference keeps them from organizing as one. The genius of this tactic is that it makes oppression self-sustaining. If your neighbor becomes your competition, if your brother becomes your rival, if your sister becomes your enemy, the system doesn't have to lift a finger. It just watches you do its work for it. Farrakhan names this dynamic for what it is: a trap disguised as identity. You think you're building individuality, you're weakening the collective, you think you're preserving uniqueness. You're allowing someone else to pick you off, one label at a time. So what does real unity look like? It's not everyone agreeing on everything. It's people with different perspectives agreeing on one non-negotiable truth: that their liberation is shared, that no one gets free until everyone does. That is economics, defense, education, health, culture. These can no longer be outsourced to outsiders. Unity in this context is infrastructure. It's an organization. It's resource pooling. It's shared goals, shared leadership, shared consequences. Farrakhan isn't describing a utopia, he's sketching a blueprint for survival. And this unity isn't theoretical. It already exists, just not for you. You see it in lobbying firms that pass laws in secret, in elite circles that protect billionaires from taxes. In this way, corporations back politicians who vote against your interests. That's what coordinated power looks like. And Farrakhan's question is simple. Why aren't Black people doing the same thing, but for themselves? Because the system doesn't fear outrage. It doesn't fear noise. It fears organization. You can protest all day, they'll wait it out. You can go viral, they'll shadow ban you. But when you organize your money, your votes, your defense, your narrative, that's when they panic. And that's when real change begins. Farrakhan understands that this unity will not come easily. Too many wounds, too much mistrust, too many agents of chaos deliberately sent to keep people divided. But the difficulty is no excuse. It's the very reason unity is so powerful. Because when it finally happens, despite the odds, it cannot be stopped. But even as he calls for unity, Farrakhan is honest. This won't be a gentle process. The system will retaliate. It will fight back. Hard. Because once black people unite across state lines, across movements, across generations, they're no longer victims. They become a nation within a nation. And no empire takes that lightly. That's why unity isn't the end of the battle. It's the beginning of a new one. A deeper, more dangerous, more serious confrontation. And that's what Farrakhan warns next.
The rhetoric that Malcolm X expressed in the ballot to the bullet still stands in 2016?
It may be. Brother Malcolm said it's either the ballot or bullet. What was brother saying? He's saying there's much that could be accomplished if we voted intelligently, voting our own self-interest as a people. But if we don't vote, if the ballot won't work, Malcolm said the bullet will. Well, we're coming to a point now whether we're going to have to decide whether we want to live under tyranny or do we want to revolt against tyranny. And that means, unfortunately, we may have to shed blood to really be free.
Unity is powerful, but power, when wielded by the historically powerless, is not received with applause. It is met with resistance, aggression, and sometimes violence. And Minister Farrakhan doesn't shy away from that truth. He warns, in a voice steady and clear, that real freedom has never come without blood. Not because violence is desirable, but because oppressors never let go quietly. You see, once unity becomes real, not a performance, not a trend, but an organized, multi-layered force, it starts to threaten the very structure of the system. It threatens profits. It threatens control. It threatens the illusion that black people can be divided forever. And when that illusion breaks, the reaction is swift and often brutal. Farrakhan is not speaking hypothetically. He's speaking historically. Name one person who gained their freedom without bloodshed. One nation that shook off its chains because the masters simply grew tired. The American Revolution, war, Haiti, rebellion, Algeria, resistance soaked in blood. Even India, hailed for its nonviolence, saw massacres and executions along the way. Freedom, when it challenges an empire, is always met with force. So why do we expect black liberation to be treated differently? Because we've been taught to be polite about injustice, to ask nicely, to make our case, to suffer in a way that's convenient for others. And when we do resist, we're told we're too loud, too angry, too radical. But Farrakhan reminds us, you cannot negotiate your way out of chains. You have to break them. And when you start breaking chains, literal or metaphorical, someone will bleed. But the blood doesn't always come from the enemy. And this is what makes Farrakhan's words so heavy. He's not romanticizing rebellion, he's acknowledging its cost. People will die. Movements will be infiltrated. Leaders will be assassinated. Families will be torn apart. That is the reality the oppressor is banking on. That you're not ready to pay that price. And yet the deeper tragedy is this. We're already bleeding. From police bullets, from poisoned water, from poverty, incarceration, and neglected health care. The violence is already here, it's just disguised as policy and wrapped in bureaucracy. What Farrakhan is asking is whether we're willing to bleed on our feet instead of on our knees. Because if you're going to suffer either way, why not suffer fighting for something that's yours? This isn't about reckless revolution, it's about strategic confrontation. Understanding that when you organize, truly organize, the system will come for you. That's why unity must come with discipline. Leaders must be prepared, communities must be fortified, Institutions must be defended. This is not just about passion, it's about preparedness. Farrakhan doesn't say this to scare you. He says it to warn you because too often movements get built on fantasy. People think power will be given to them once they march long enough, chant loud enough, or vote hard enough. But power has never been given. It is only taken. And taking it comes with real risk. This is why superficial movements collapse, because they are not built to withstand the counterattack. They don't expect the sabotage, the betrayal, the media smears, the arrests. But Farrakhan is telling you now, if you are serious about freedom, then be serious about what it costs. And the final, most brutal truth? If you're not willing to risk everything, then you're not ready to be free. That's why Farrakhan doesn't end with this warning. He moves forward because blood is not the end of liberation. It's often the beginning of something bigger. And what comes after blood is what the enemy fears the most. Black control over everything they said you could never own.
So if you can trust me, and I offer my life, and will take the life of those who would take the money and run or steal from us. I think there's a time that somebody got to pay a price for robbing us. Somebody has to pay a price. It's not the white man's system. We have to set up a system of jurisprudence in our own community. The Chinese got their own way of dealing with their own, you know. You don't hear nothing about it. The Jews deal with their own. The Greeks, the Italians, they deal with their own. We got to deal with our people. We send you to the political office to do something for us. You don't get a big salary, but we sent you there to work for us. Then somebody comes along and gives you a few dollars and you start working for other interests. We make an example of you. That's where it's got to be. It's coming to that. We don't have time to play with the destiny of a people who have suffered for 460 years. We're tired of it. And these young brothers, 13, 14, 15, they're the killers today. They don't play with their OGs who are the old guard in the gangs. It's the young that are doing the killing. They're tired. They're fed up. So when they know what is good for them, please don't play with them, because that's the end. They will take you out because they're made like that. That's the best generation we ever produced, but we got to be the leaders that offer them hope and a plan and set up an example. The first thing Elijah Muhammad said we should do, with your first $1 million, he said, set up farming to feed your people. That's number one. A bank that your people trust you, they can put money in their own bank for investment. Let's start with farming first. Right now in the inner cities, they're called food deserts. And when you go to shop, or your wife goes to shop, you shop in neighborhoods where you think the food is better. And you can't afford Whole Foods because it's more expensive, but it's organically grown food. But look at all the empty lots in the black community. What's happening with those lots in our community? Suppose we went to the mayor and we want those lots. What do we have to do to get them? What are you going to do with them? We're going to set up urban gardening. We've learned how to do that, and in Chicago, we are looking at that. In Newark, New Jersey, Ras Baraka is doing that. We know how to produce good quality food. That's one of the first things we should do, because they're killing us through the food, through the water. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said the water should be 99% pure for human consumption. The water is not that. They've got all kind of chemicals in the water right now.
Once you've understood the cost of freedom, once you've accepted that real liberation may draw blood, you're left with one final question. What is it all for? What is the point of the fight, the sacrifice, the risk, if not to seize control over the very things that keep a people alive? That's where Minister Farrakhan brings everything together. Not in theory. In infrastructure. Liberation isn't about poetic speeches or symbolic gestures. It's about who owns what, who controls the food, who sets the prices, who owns the land beneath your feet and the water you drink. That's what Farrakhan names as the final, and most important, frontier. Black control over the entire chain of survival. Start with food. In Farrakhan's words, if you cannot feed yourself, you are not free. Dependency on grocery stores owned by outsiders means that at any moment, due to crisis, conflict, or simply policy, your shelves could go empty. Food deserts aren't accidental. They are engineered realities that keep Black communities malnourished, disempowered, and financially drained. What does sovereignty mean if your children are hungry and you need permission to feed them? That's why Farrakhan doesn't just talk about farming as a profession. He talks about it as a form of power. Reclaiming agriculture isn't just about self-reliance, it's about economic control. When you grow your food, process it, distribute it, and sell it through your networks, you are no longer a customer, you are a producer. And producers set the terms. The same is true for water. Access to clean water is one of the most fundamental rights and one of the most consistent tools of control. From Flint to Jackson to Cape Town, Black communities have suffered water crises not because of scarcity, but because of deliberate neglect. Farrakhan's solution: don't wait for them to fix it. Control it yourself. Own the wells. Maintain the pipes. Regulate the distribution. Because he understands that whoever controls the tap controls the people. And then comes the economy. Farrakhan knows, as every empire builder knows, that money is not just currency. It's a command. Without Black-owned banks, insurance companies, transportation networks, and technology platforms, Black money becomes a river that flows directly into someone else's ocean. You earn it. They invest it. You spend it. They profit. It's economic extraction dressed up as capitalism. But when you control your economy, you do more than keep your wealth. You direct it. You decide which businesses survive, which schools get built, which leaders get funded. Farrakhan isn't interested in token equity. He's talking about total economic ecosystems that aren't dependent on white capital, foreign aid, or government grants. He's talking about industries owned, governed, and protected by Black people, for Black people. And let's be clear, this isn't a call for isolation. It's a call for independence, for dignity, for negotiating from a position of strength, not desperation. You cannot demand justice when your land is leased, your food is imported, and your economy is outsourced. Control is the difference between being a tenant and being a landlord, between surviving and setting the rules. Farrakhan's point is simple, but deadly serious. You can't be free in someone else's house. You need your own, and not just the deed, but the plumbing, the wiring, the foundation. Because in the end, control over the essentials isn't about luxury. It's about survival. It's about refusing to let the same systems that once enslaved you continue to feed you, clothe you, educate your children, and provide your medicine. Because if they can feed you, they can starve you. If they can educate you, they can miseducate you. If they can employ you, they can fire you. And if they can fund your movements, they can dismantle them. If the system has shown you it will never protect, feed, or free you, then what exactly are you still waiting for? Let us know in the comment section. Are you willing to sacrifice comfort for control and peace for power, or are you content living under someone else's terms? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it, because here, we tell the stories no one else will. From ancient African civilizations to modern Black excellence, we reveal the truth, the power, and the legacy they tried to erase. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.